Thank you for watching this video. Please click on the like and subscribe buttons so that I can continue to make more videos like this.
Now that we've gotten into the basics of how to handle blueprints, let's get started with our lesson. So here we are on the very front page of the blueprint, and if you look down in the corner of the print, it's going to be your lower right hand corner right by the clamp right down there. We're on page 0.0, and your copy is going to be a clean copy and you can follow along much better with your copy. Right here I want to point out something. That says DPA Architects, and that stands for Design of Progressive Architecture. And we want to thank them very much for allowing us to use their prints for this lesson. You see, blueprints are copywritten, just like movie scripts are and music and things like that. So it's intellectual property. You need permission of the owner in order to use these prints or even to build a project of this design. So we very much want to thank DPA in Scottsdale, Arizona for allowing us to use their prints because they thought it was important for educational purposes. Another thing that we have to point out that a print needs to have in order to make it legal is in the same corner. It's got here, City of Peoria Buildings and Safety. This is a stamp where the City of Peoria, where this project is going to be built, they must approve this set of prints as well according to their local building codes. So you need that stamp on there. And this stamp right here is for fire and life safety plan, and that stamp must also be on print in order to have that approved. We can look at also in this lower corner, since we're here, if you look right here, that says development plan right there. And basically this is in an office park where there are several other buildings, and it has our building highlighted where this one is going to be built. And it says here 87th Avenue, and this says Union Hills and Country Club Road. Now again, we know that this is in Peoria. If we look at the vicinity map right here, we have a street map. And it says up here, again on your print, project location, it's the southwest corner of Union Hills and Country Club Road in Peoria, Arizona. So you need that information. You need to know where the job is, of course, if you're going to be working there and building it. If we go on this side of the page, we might as well stay here. It says project team. It's got the owner, Brookman Development, they're the general contractor. The architect, again, DPA Architects of Scottsdale, Arizona. That's 7272 East Indian School Road, Suite 214, Scottsdale, Arizona, 85251. Phone number 480-941-4222. And again, thank you very much for their support. And it gives mechanical engineering, plumbing engineering, gives the engineering company, the electrical engineering company. So a lot of people put in a lot of work on a set of blueprints to make sure that everything on the building is going to be correct. Now if we go again, project data, again we have the address again. The square footage, 3,631 square feet. It gives all other information. Governing building codes are the ones that are important here. Let's look down. I want to find almost in the middle, 2002 National Electric Code. And even though the 2005 code is out, the municipalities do have a little bit of leeway as far as which code they're using. So the 2005 code just came out. This project must be built to the 2002 code. And we're more concerned with the electrical aspects of these prints. So let's move back a little bit on the print. We have here the sheet index, and that's this column of information right here. Basically what the sheet index is telling us is the order of the pages on the prints. In other words, we're at 00, and that's title information sheet. And as it goes down, the A sheets through here are the architectural sheets. You're going to find things like the floor plan, the millwork plan, which is the furniture, the floor and ceiling, the ceiling elevations, the floor types, the door types, things like that. Very important information as we'll get into. Next we have the M sheets, the mechanical plans. That's for your heating and cooling systems. P is your plumbing. E, the electrical drawings. Those are the ones we'll spend most of the time in greatest detail with, of course. FP is the fire sprinkler piping plan. The FA is the fire alarm. And so these plans, fire alarm, we will also spend some time with there because there's a lot of electrical details and a lot of electrical work that goes in with the fire alarm system. In other words, they're very closely related. Lastly, what we have here are the general notes which apply to the job. And I want to point some things out on the general notes here because you need to look at these as they apply to the whole job. It says note 1, the contractor shall visit the site, the drawings and details, and report any discrepancies immediately to the architect and owner. So in other words, you're supposed to take a look at things, go over their plans, and see that everything is in the right dimension. They have what it's going to take to build this building, that there wasn't an oversight in some way. So when you're a contractor, you're responsible that you have the ability to build this plan. Now, if the architect makes a mistake, it's kind of your responsibility to catch that. That's why you need to check that out. There's another note here that I want to point out here too, is number 11. It says, do not scale drawings. Use the dimensions noted on the plans. This mostly refers to things that are very precise in location. When you're putting outlets along the wall, typically you can scale off of the plan and you're going to go to the closest stud. Same with light switches and lighting locations. If it's a ceiling grid, you pretty much know where you're going to drop the fixture in. However, there are certain pieces of equipment and certain locations where there's furniture and other things where the dimension, the exact dimension is given for the placement of your electrical device. You must follow what is given there instead of just scaling it off the print in that kind of a situation. This pretty much covers the first page. It's time now to go to the next page of the print, and without turning the page we can see that's going to be A0.1. It's going to be standard notes and abbreviations. The next sheet we're on right now is sheet A0.1, which again is down in this corner here, and it's the standard notes and abbreviations sheet. Before we go on, I'd like to ask you a question. Did you read all of the notes on the previous page? We'd like you to not give this a quick hit like we mentioned. Learn specifics that go to the job. So you should have read through those notes to learn things that apply to the job even though they may not directly apply to the electrical work. Let's start going through this page and learn the things that are on it. We start up here, we have abbreviations. Now again, not all of these abbreviations are going to apply to electrical work, but you should become familiar with them and start learning them for the job because you'll run into them in various stages of work. Now here, the third one down, AFF, that's a very important one. That stands for above finished floor, and that's how dimensions are given a lot. Another one, PNL, that stands for panel. SUSP, that means suspended, and a suspended ceiling is how that's used, and that affects the height of the ceiling and our lighting. So we'll have to get into that and learn what that means. Underneath that we have equipment abbreviations, and some of those directly apply to electrical work, like D for data. Underneath that, DS for dimmer switch. So these are things that, again, you want to become familiar with, and you'll start learning them as you use them throughout your work with your jobs. Okay, millwork general notes. They're really, on these notes, there's not a whole lot that applies to the electrical work, and of course I learned that though because I read the notes. Just do that for your own education as part of this lesson. Fire rated notes. Now these apply mostly to the framing. However, we will need to look at note 4. It says gypsum wall board shall be 5/8 inch type. In other words, it's 5/8 inch thick, which is generally used in commercial construction. That helps you know something very important, which is how thick of a plastering to put on your boxes. There's something that indirectly, when talking about the walls, indirectly gives you some electrical information. We're going to go up to this corner, and it says symbols, general symbols and abbreviations. Now, as we go through these, you'll see often a circle with a number in it. It says a keynote leader. In other words, on a plan, you'll see something, this might have a number 2 or 3 or whatever, and then you go to the side, you'll see a bunch of circles with that number, and that gives the information that applies to that note. Detail reference, this usually applies to a piece of equipment. You'll have the number of the detail and then the page number typically. It refers to a different sheet. Millwork reference number says sheet A 4.1, and it'll explain this. This hexagon door type reference, this also has some electrical notes in hexagons, so you have to look at the page that you're on. This rectangle with the number, room. In other words, the room number reference. Now sheet A 2.5, if somebody says conference room, you can look it up and find out what number it is. And again, if somebody says room 110, you can look up room 110 and see what room that is. This triangle, revision tag, and you'll see that down here with the number 1 in it. What that means is that the plans were changed slightly, and you'll often see a cloud. This squiggly line is called a cloud around it. And with the number 1, that usually means that it was the city or the planning review that approves the blueprints had a change in the prints. If it's like a 2 or a 3, that typically means that the customer came in during construction and was looking around and decided they need something changed with the layout or some other things added. So you need to make sure that you're using the most recently updated revisions on your prints. Okay, RCP legend, that stands for Reflected Ceiling Plan. And there's a whole separate page for the reflected ceiling plan. And this is basically giving the symbols for the lights that are used, and this is repeated on our reflected ceiling plan, so that makes it very nice for us, and we'll cover this when we get there. Wall type legend. Okay, in other words, when you look at the plans, you're going to see these kinds of symbols, and this tells you what the wall is. For example, number 3, new furring over existing CMU wall. Okay, let's go through our abbreviations. CMU, concrete masonry unit. That's a block wall. And furring means they put the metal studs up against that wall, and then they're going to put the sheetrock on the metal studs, which is very, very common in commercial construction. I'm sure you've seen it. So that's the symbol when that happens on a wall. I also want to point out number 5, new partial height wall. It's got these 2 lines like this. A partial height wall is a wall that does not go all the way from the floor to the ceiling. And we have several partial height walls which cause us to have to construct our project in some different ways, or to install our electrical work in some particular ways to accommodate that partial height wall. So that covers the information on page A0.1, the standard notes and abbreviations. The next page we're going to be working with is page A0.2, wall types. And again, that's always down in this corner right here. This page is mostly about framing details, and it shows wall thicknesses. And of course, when you get on the job, the walls are usually going to be built by the time that you get there. So you don't have to worry about these things in advance necessarily. But what's most important about these is a sheetrock thickness, because the sheetrock won't be on the walls, and sometimes there will be 2 layers of sheetrock for like fire rating. So instead of a 5/8 inches of sheetrock, it's going to be 1.25 inches. So you need to get a special plastering for that. That's why you might need to learn how to do these things. This page, even though it applies mostly to the framers, there are some things from the previous page that we learned, and let's start looking at them right now. But even before that, I want to mention here, underneath this drawing, it says scale. And it says 3 inches equals 1 foot. And that applies to this drawing. And here again, scale 3 inches equals 1 foot, applying to this drawing, because this is a detail page, and it's giving several different details of different types of wall. Now if we get up to number 5 up here, scale 1.5 inches equals 1 foot. So if you're looking at a specific drawing or a specific sheet, you need to make sure you're using the right scale, because sometimes when you do scale things off, that's very important. You don't want to assume that it's 1/8 of an inch per foot and it's actually 1/4 inch per foot. Let's also go back to this drawing number 5 here, because from the last page, remember, we've got a circle with a number in it. Those are for key notes. In other words, like this one's number 4, and it says 3 5/8 inch studs, 16 inches on center, and 5/8 type X gypsum wallboard. So that's a detail for the framers. But again, to find that information for note 4, you go to the keyed notes. Electrical keyed notes are drawn the exact same way. Here's another one that we saw. Remember? It's got the circle, and it's got the number and it's got A9.1. Now, on the architectural sheets, if you go to page A9.1, detail 9 will explain this information right here. And that's for the framers. Now, we may not have that sheet because that's specific information for the framers. You see, this set of blueprints is the one that the electricians get. It's not the every single page of prints for the entire job. And of course, the general contractor has all of those, and you can go and look at those at his trailer. And many jobs also have job specification books with other information as well. But for this lesson, and that's why this print was good for us. It doesn't have every single page of prints for every single trade. But you could go to the architectural prints, page A9.1, and this number 9 would be like, this one's detail 5, or 1, or 2, or 3, or 4. You look for one of those numbers like that. That would be number 9 on page A9.1, and it would give you information about something like that. And at some time you may find an electrical detail where you need to look something like that up. So this is a chance, even though it's not an electrical piece of information, you're learning how to read the blueprint, and that may apply directly to your electrical work. So again, the main things we learned from this is the keynotes, how to use those, how to look for scale, and how to use some of the other symbols on this page. And that's all we really have to say about page A0.2, wall types. So it's time to go to our next page. The next page of our blueprints is page A0.3, the code study plan. So again, down in this corner we find that information. And if we look here, it says the scale is 1/4 of an inch per 1 foot. So this is the first time that we run into this on the large drawing of the plan. And this is the first time we get an overview of actually what the shape of the build-out is going to look like. So we're going to look at this. Now there's not a lot of electrical information here, although we can see we've got an oven, a dishwasher, and a refrigerator, so we know we've got to put some equipment there. You can see that there's some furniture here, so you can see they'll need some plugs and data around these workstations. This is an open office in the center of the room, so this tells us it's got to be a ceiling drop or it's got to be some underground. So you kind of get the look how that has to work there. Janitor closet, we know there's a water heater. So here's some things we get to learn, just a quick glance at the plans. Let's go over here to the wall type legend. And again, we kind of covered this previously. And this number 3, new furring over existing CMU wall. Again, it's furring over a block wall. That application happens right here. This new partial height wall, these 2 lines, we'll see this right here in this corner. Even though the lines are very close together, that's where that happens, and it happens again right here. So those are some things that we learned earlier, and you can see how they show up on the blueprint. This number 1 with a circle around it, it points down to this symbol here. So we go to our key notes, and we learned that on a previous page, and it says recessed fire extinguisher cabinet location, and it gives a type of fire extinguisher. Now, we're not going to be building the cabinet or putting that in, but it is a key note, and again, electrical key notes are the same. So right now, what I want you to do is pause the video and find the other fire cabinet, because there's another one on the set of prints. So pause the video right now and find where that is. Okay, did you find it? It's right here. Okay, we have the same symbol here as we do here, the triangle with a smaller black triangle in it. And key note 1, it's also key note 1. It's the same key note because the same detail applies to that same feature. Now again, we won't be installing that, but it's the same principle as reading an electrical blueprint. We will have situations where a key note applies in several different areas on our electrical prints. Reading key notes is reading key notes on prints. Another thing, okay, let's go to these room prints. 102, a box with a number in it. It's an office. Office 103, box with a number 104. The open office, 108. Storage room, 113. Again, the symbol we learned, when you have a rectangular box with the number, It's the room number. That's what this print says that means. So you can, if you're given a change sheet, for example, that says, hey, in room 107, they want to change the configuration of the plugs and they give you a drawing, they're going to expect you to be able to find out that room 107 is right here. And then they'll give the information on the plugs that they want to change. So let's say they want to change them on the north wall. Well, down here, it's north is this direction. So on the north wall, let's say they want a double duplex plugs instead of a single receptacle. So that would be, if that was your change sheet, they would expect you to be able to find that and make the appropriate change. So you have to know how to use these room numbers as well. So that's pretty much what we need to learn off of the code study plan on page A 0.3. The next page of our blueprint is page A 1.1, and that's the partial site plan. If you remember from the front page A 0.0, it was given an aerial view of the project. Well, this is a much closer look at it. And we can see Union Hills Drive here, 87th Avenue. And we see in this complex, there's building A, B, there's other buildings over here. We're working in building E, and we have this part of building E for the area that we're going to be doing the build out in, about 3,600 square feet, and that encompasses this area right here, project location. This says scale 1/16 of an inch equals 1 foot, but we also have 45 feet 2 inches. So again, the given dimension takes precedence over the scale. Now this page isn't really for electricians necessarily on this project. However, something like this could be helpful for site lighting if you had to put parking lot lights in, for example, out here. Now this already had the parking lot lights installed, and the plans just refer to the build out right here. If you were doing the whole project and building all the buildings, you would have to do parking lot lighting and things of that nature. Now I also want you to look at something else. Over here it says typical TYP, that's what that means, CJ and step and slab on grade. Well, CJ in our abbreviations is control joint. An expansion joint basically is what that is. And that's not an electrical abbreviation for something you have to worry about. And it says here NTS, which means not to scale. That's not in our abbreviations, but that's what that means. And you can see here they're giving you dimensions for this. It's not scaled off. Now sometimes on a large project, you'll have something like this around a control joint. You'll have to conduit, you have to stop it, have a small flex loop, and then another conduit for the expansion. And I worked on the Bank One ballpark, and they had a situation like that where they had to put that in for expansion on such a large project like that. And you were given a specific detail of how to do that on the electrical sheets on that job. So here's something I just want to bring to your attention. It's a control joint, and you may have a situation where you have to allow for expansion in your flex, but on this job, that's not something that we have to worry about. That pretty much covers what we need to get from page A 1.1, the partial site plan. The next page on our print is the demolition floor plan, page A 2.0, and we see that again our scale is 1/4 of an inch is equal to 1 foot. Now this plan doesn't give a whole lot of electrical information, but there are some things we can learn from it. If we look here at this keynote number 2, it says remove existing storefront door and frame. What has to happen as well is they have to put in another door, and that occurred. If we look here at note 1, okay, remove existing storefront glazing system as indicated, which means they're taking out the window and they were going to put a door here. So for fire laws, they needed to have 2 doors, at least 2 doors for a building, a unit this size. And the tenant didn't want this door in, but they wanted a door here. So what that means for you, if you were going to run any conduit along the wall, you could not run any across here, even though it's a window, and you wouldn't run it across anyway. But if this was just a block wall like this right here, you might be tempted to run some conduit across here if you needed to. Well, you couldn't do that unless you were sure to run that above the height where the door might be. So that's what I want to point out here, and on this job it's really kind of a no-brainer since you'd be below the ceiling height anyway. But I just want to put that in your mind. You've got to kind of be aware of things that are going along. And see this right here, that's a revision. Remember that triangle? And again, it says down in this quarter, City of Peoria. In other words, for them to be able to take this door out, they had to go to the city and get their people that approve blueprints to approve that change in the plan. For page A 2.0, the demolition floor plan, that pretty much covers what we need to learn. The next page in our set of drawings is page A 2.1, the foundation floor plan. The scale is 1/4 inch for every foot. And again, this is a page that doesn't have a whole lot of electrical information on it. However, it does have some things that are important in learning how to read blueprints, and it's good to learn those things on a simple page. So when we get to a more complicated page, some of those things will be more second nature. If you remember some of the wall features, this is a concrete wall. And this is concrete, this is concrete, these are windows. Again, we learned those from some of the other pages. This is a cloud, which means there was a change, and it describes a change in the sidewalk. Remember from the last page, this was a door, and that was going to be taken out. This was a window to be taken out, and you can see that the door is put in right there. Another thing that we can look at over here in this corner, typical control joints and steps and slab on grade. Now again, we're not going to be putting these in. You may be on a job where you need to work around that, a control joint, so this just gets you used to that and puts that in your mind that you need to be aware of that in case it's a very big project and your electrical work needs to account for expansion. And that covers page A2.1, the foundation floor plan for this lesson. Now it's page A2.2, and it's the floor plan. We can see that our scale is 1/4 inch is equal to 1 foot. Now what I want to do on this plan is concentrate on the area right up in here. So we're going to zoom in onto this right now because there's a lot of information right here that we need to learn. Now if you'll remember earlier on page A0.1 we had some symbols, and those symbols dealt with things like this hexagon, things like this elliptical shaped thing, the circle, the split circle, the diamonds with the letters in them. So we're going to learn what these symbols are that we briefly touched on page A0.1 and how to use those. Here we are back in the upper right hand corner of page A0.1. We have the keynote symbol, which we've talked about earlier. We have the circle that's split with information on the top and bottom half, the hexagon, the ellipse, the diamond, the room number which we've used. So we're going to learn some more of those things right now. We're going to cover some of the symbols that we got into earlier. We can see we got a room 111 in the box. This is room 110, and it's named women's restroom, men's restroom, break room, room 112. So we've got that symbol. We've got this hexagon with 111, and that's in room 111. That's for the door symbol. Room 110, that means that's a door, and we find that on the door schedule. That is going to be on page A2.5, and we'll be taking a look at that. So we're now at page A2.5, and this is the door and window schedule, and we're looking at the door schedule right now. So I want to take a closer look at some information at the right hand side of the door schedule. We're working right now in the very upper left corner of page A2.5. 110, room 110 is the men's restroom, and 111 the women's restroom. Now above this column it says door number, and above this column it says location. But the important thing for us is this right here. So we had doors in these two rooms. It's type A, And pictures of the doors are given a little bit later, and we'll show you those. This is the width of the door. This is what's important. It's 3 feet, 3 feet wide on both doors. So this tells us how much the door is going to swing. And of course the height is the next column, 7 feet on the height of each of those doors. So if we have something above it for the ceiling that we have to go in, we need to be cognizant of that. Okay, the next dimension is thickness, 1 3/4. And the next column is material, SCWD. Now what does that stand for? Well, on this page they've included something very nice for us, abbreviations. Okay, and we see SCWD, solid core wood door. So that's what that door is made out of, it's a solid core wood door. Now if we go here, we can see something, if we move back on the door types in the middle of the sheet, just below the door schedule. So we've got door types, and there's A, a B, and a C. Now our doors were the type A, and it says it's a solid core wood door. It gives a height of 7 feet and a width of 3 feet. And that information is on the table, and we've already seen that. Now it's important to know things about the doors, because around doors you may have an exit sign, you may have lights, in some installations you may have a ceiling fan. So you want to make sure that the swing of the door is going to clear any kind of light or any kind of electrical installation. Also look at the swing of the door. You know you're going to have a light switch, so you want to put it here where you can reach it when you open the door, not here behind the door or here where you have to walk into a dark room to turn on the switch. So those are some very fundamental things that you have to keep in mind with that. I also want to point out right here, we have a circle that says 4 on the top, A 5.1 on the bottom. And it's got this black line around here. Now this is a detail. This circle points to that detail. That A 5.1 is on the A sheet 5.1. Detail number 4 on that sheet is this area surrounded by this dotted line. Let's take a look at that right now. Okay, so on our page A2.2, the floor plan, we had the note, the circle with the top half saying 4 and the bottom half saying A5.1. And so we're at page A5.1 now, the enlarged plans and elevations, and 4 is detail number 4, and it says enlarged plans at restrooms 110 and 111. Now there isn't much electrical information right here, but we can look at it and see things like we got the swing of the door, so again we know we have light and a fan for the bathroom. We can see how the restroom is somewhat configured. We know there will be a light over the sink usually, and over the lavatories there are going to be lights. But I want to point out another symbol to you on this page. Look at this right here. It's like a arrow pointing down. It says 5B/A5.1. Well, we're on page A5.1, but it's 5B. Now, if we go above us, we can see this is 5 elevations at men's restroom 111, and we have an A and a B. So 5B is this drawing right here. So we're going to take a closer look at that drawing and see if there's something that we can find out that will help us with our electrical work. Now we're at 5B on page A5.1. I want you to look at keynote 12 right here. And that says 4 1/4 inch by 4 1/4 inch ceramic wall tile to 4 feet above finished floor, typical for all elevations. See finished schedule sheet A2.4. Now we know that this is the wall height in this restroom, and that tile is going to go around the entire wall. We also know that we have a wall switch that has to go in. 4 feet is right around the height where wall switches start to go in. So we're going to have to find out, is the switch above the tile, is it down, is it inside the tile? We also had 5/8 sheetrock to worry about. We now have the thickness of the tile to worry about when we go to make the thickness of our plastering. These are some things that we have to take into consideration now. And here's a place right here we can get some of that information that's going to affect your electrical work. It's not pulling wire, it's not bending conduit, but it affects where you put your box and the thickness of your plastering. So even though this is a material that's not electrical material, it directly affects the work that you're going to have to do. And this is how you can find a detail on that. And there are other ways, of course, to find this information. We're showing you some redundancy on the blueprints because we want you to have several ways in order to find answers that you need to find. So now let's go back to our floor plan A2.2. So now we're back here. So we've taken a look at some of the details of the things that go into this area. Now the next thing I want to do is just slide over to the break room, room 112, because there are some things there. So let's slide our drawing over there a little bit. We can look at note 3 right here. And on our key notes it says kitchen equipment, owner provided and installed. And the key notes are in the top right hand corner of your page. Again, we're on page A2.2 again. Also look here, the hexagon 112. We're in room 112, that's the door, and we looked at that last time. We have here a diamond, like home plate, D and E. The diamond is the window schedule. And that is also on page A 2.5, just like the door schedule. So we have D and E to look up, and we're going to find out what those are. So we're back again on page A2.5, door and window schedules, and this time we're taking a look at the window schedule, and it's in the lower corner of the paper. Now we were concerned about window types D and types E. Type D, okay, the size, the width, and the height is given as 1 foot 3.5 inches times 10 feet. So that's kind of a narrow, skinny window. And remember, that was going to be inside in a place, and it's not like an exterior window. So we also had window type E, which is 1 foot 3/4 inch times 10 feet in height. So again, we have some pretty narrow windows. Below our window schedule, we have window types. Now we don't have D and E; it only lists A and B. So where would you find types D and E? Those would be something you would have to find from the general contractor. They would have their own specific sheets for those. And again, this is more of an architectural thing, and there's no electrical work going to these windows. It's the information isn't included here for you, so you would have to get that information from the general contractor there. That concludes the information we need off of sheet A2.5, the door and window schedule for the windows. Let's go back to our floor plan on A2.2, and we were in room 112. We have this elliptical 112A. Now that was the millwork schedule, if we can remember. So we can look at some details for 112A and find this countertop that goes here. There's a note 4 keyed note pointing here. And if you look at your key notes in the top right hand corner, note 4 says millwork, see millwork elevations, sheet A 4.1. So that's what we're going to do to find that information. Let's turn to that right now, sheet A 4.1, and we're going to find this 112A. Here we are on page A 4.1, which is the millwork elevations page. And we had our little ellipse 112A, and here's the detail for that, which we had from page A2.2. It said find the detail on this page. And it's millwork elevation at break room 112. So that's what we're looking at right now. We can look at it and see that we have a dotted line here. Note 9 off to the right of this page says that that's a full height refrigerator. Owner provided and installed. What we also want to look at here, though, this is like some millwork, and we have this E right here, the square, and it has an E above it. On page A 0.1, under the equipment abbreviations, and E stood for duplex electrical outlet. We know that we're going to have an outlet here. We also know we have one here, and we're going to have one here. Now, note 12 up here says electrical outlet, see electrical drawings. Note 11, which is this area right here, says oven, owner provided and installed. So we know that that electrical outlet is going to be one for that oven. We have this right here, and it says dishwasher, owner provided and installed on note 10. So we know that this outlet there is going to be for the dishwasher. It says here at the bottom the scale is 1/2 inch for every foot. But we also have lots of dimensions here. So you go by the dimensions, and the scaling on these would go off the electrical print. You can actually go to the closest stud in here, but you want to make certain that when you lay this out, that the stud isn't right here, that it's hidden, or right here, or here on the corner in the middle of a cabinet. You want to make sure if it's inside a cabinet or inside some kind of furniture in a workplace, that it's in an area that's open and not right at where a partition wall on that cabinet comes. Now we see here we have the height 2 feet 10 inches, and then that's to the top of the countertop. Then there's a little backsplash, and this plug has to be above that. To get the height of this other dimension on this counter, there's a circle with 3 on the top in A4.2. That means on page A4.2, detail 3, we're going to find a larger drawing of this with more details. Just like next to it on page A4.2, it will be detail number 1. So they're going to take this here and give us even more details on that. So when we get to that page, we'll look at those and see how that might affect our electrical work. And remember, we already did one of these earlier. It was detail 4 and was page A5.1, and that was the bathroom details. So for right now, that finishes what we need to look at on page A4.1. So let's go back to our floor plan on page A2.2. Okay, so now we're back at our break room, room 112, and at this time I want to point out a few other things pertaining to this area and pertaining to page A2.2 that are on this print. Notice note 6. In the key notes it says soffit overhead. See reflected ceiling plan, sheet A6.1. And that's this dotted line here that goes down and it continues down, and even at the bottom of the page where my finger's gone off, there's another note 6. There's also right here a note 6. Even though it's a different shape, it's a soffit. So you'll notice that on the reflected ceiling plan, sheet A6.1, and we'll have details for that. And that's important for us because when we have a ceiling, we usually have to put lights in it. So I want to point that out there on this page. That is the conclusion of sheet A2.2 for us.
Thank you for watching this video.